Now, as we all know, because the newspapers tell us every day, alcohol will kill you, as will salt, coffee, red meat, buns and more or less anything, or possibly they can all be good for you in the right doses. Just about everything gives you cancer or a heart attack. If one could only live without eating or drinking at all, how wonderful it will be, or possibly without reading at all. We asked Michael Mosley, one of the few qualified doctors in this tatty trade, to give us a guide.
There's a lot of confusion about which foods are good for you and which are bad for you. And part of the reason for that is that a lot of studies are really quite flawed. A decent study is one called a prospective cohort study. What you do then is you take a group of people who don't have a disease, you test them, you follow them for a long period of time, and then you see what happens. When you do that sort of a study, then you get some big surprises. Now, for 40 years, we have been told that saturated fats, like butter, are bad for us. But when they did a prospective cohort study, they found that actually there's very little evidence that saturated fats lead to heart disease. Margarine, on the other hand, which starts out as something like a liquid sunflower oil, and it has to be turned into a solid, well, that processing leads to something called trans fats, and it turns out that trans fats are the villain. So given a choice between butter and margarine, I personally opt for butter. I like the taste of smoothies, and that's because they are incredibly sweet. In a survey done of 52 commercial smoothies, they discovered that 41 of them had more calories and more sugar in them than you'd find in a Coca-Cola. The other problem with smoothies is that once you take the fruit, you remove the peel, you remove the fibre by mashing it up, well, you've got rid of most of the benefits. You would be far better off eating fruit. Without a doubt, this has been one of the government's most successful campaigns. The problem is, fruit and vegetables, good for you, yes, but lots of other things then get included in the 5 a day. For example, when you get a processed food where it says 1 of 5 a day, and yet that contains huge amounts of sugar and salt. There have been conflicting studies, but I think actually the evidence is quite strong that if you reduce the amount of salt in your diet, that will reduce blood pressure and therefore your risk of having a stroke. The problem is just getting rid of the salt dispenser is probably not going to be enough, because there is lots of added salt all around, even things that don't taste salty, like bread and muffins. There is, however, one piece of good news. Coffee has something of a bad boy image, because down the years it's been blamed for everything from heart disease to cancer. But when they did a prospective cohort study, they found that coffee seems to be good for you in all sorts of ways, not least cutting your risk of suicide. It seems that there is something in the coffee, possibly caffeine, that acts as an antidepressant. It boosts neurotransmitters in your brain that give you a sort of feel-good factor. Cheers.
That was rather useful. It was Dr. Michael Mosley. He'll be back tomorrow night on BBC Two in his series on health matters. Trust me, I'm a doctor.